2022 is finally here and players are starting to return back to the tour. 2021, it was truly an exciting year. We saw a lot of the younger guys climb up in the rankings, making serious results. We've watched as Djokovic stood his ground, letting them know who's still boss. We've also seen some unreal improvement in guys like Karatsev, Sinner, Alcaraz, Rude, Nori, and many more. A lot of movement, a lot of action. What's up guys and welcome to Talk the Tennis. My name is Enrique Garcia and today I'll be giving my prediction on the top 10 ATP rankings at the end of 2022, a year from now. So let's start off by taking a look at the 2021 year-end rankings. Finishing first, we had Novak Djokovic. Second, we had Daniil Medvedev. In third, we had Alexander Zverev. Fourth, we had Stefanos Tsitsipas. In fifth, we had Andrei Rublev. In sixth, we had Rafael Nadal. In seventh, we had Mateo Beretini. Finishing eighth, we had Casper Ruud. Ninth, we had Hubert Hurkacz. And in 10th, Yannick Sinner. Alright, so before we get into my predictions, keep in mind that the ATP is about as predictable as Nick Kyrgios's mood swings. Injuries, mental health, streaks of momentum, personal life, luck, all these things are impossible to foresee, which is why tennis experts always fail to predict the ATP rankings. Regardless, I'm gonna make my predictions and justify each position. So, finishing 10th at the end of this year, drumroll, Carlos Alcaraz. There were many contenders for this position, but I just had to give it to the teenager, who this year will climb up 22 spots. In my previous video, I talked about why he'll be a number one in the future, and I'm convinced he'll make his way there in some years. But in 2022, he'll break into the top 15, and at the end of the year, I think he'll manage to just scrape the top 10. He's beaten 3 top 10 players in 2021. He's won his first title. He reached the quarters at the US Open, and he's showing extreme signs of confidence. I think the 18-year-old has that it factor. He just needs to mature a little bit more before he can contend for those top 3 positions. But for now, I'm confident in my decision to give him number 10. In 9th, the clay court king himself, Rafael Nadal, who drops 3 ranking spots. I know this position will strike controversy, and I am and have always been a huge fan of the guy, but I'm just trying to be honest and realistic here. Let's hope he proves me wrong, but I just don't see how he's capable of competing with the top guys week in and week out anymore. Having said that, I do think that when he's injury free, he's still very much capable of racking up a lot of points in the clay court season, just enough to maintain his top 10 position for one more season. Will he win another French Open? I'd love to see it, but to win 6 best out of 5 matches in a row against guys like Tsitsipas, Casper Ruud, Zverev, and Thiem, I just have big doubts. Does that mean he won't make it deep in the French Open and possibly win some Masters 1000s? Absolutely not. I still think he's got what it takes to hold his own against almost anyone. So 9th for Rafa, even though sadly I feel like 2022 will be his last competitive year, at least at that level, and we'll slowly start to see the inevitable. Please prove me wrong. In 8th, I have Mateo Beretini. Beretini is an interesting one to analyze. I think he's got the biggest serve forehand 1-2 punch in the tour right now. These 2 weapons are more than 50% of the reason I'd say that he's made his way into the top 10 in the last few years, because they're simply unmatched, and he's figured out how to use them well. This 2022, I predict he's gonna go really far in the Wimbledon. Having said that, I don't think he's as complete of a player as his competitors in the top 10, who are more agile, have better coordination, have more effective backhands, and can more easily turn defense into attack. I think Berettini might be quite near to his ceiling and his potential at the ATP. I'm just not quite sure if he could do better than he's already done. I still think he's a great player with great potential to go deep in Grand Slams, but I just don't see how he can reinvent his style to become more complete and versatile, which is what Zverev, Medvedev, Tsitsipas all have in common. Either way, I don't think he's on the decline or anything like that. He's still 25 and has plenty of years ahead of him. He'll continue being really difficult to beat. So yeah, definitely deserving of a top 10 position this coming 2022, and I think number 8 is appropriate for him. So in 7th, I have Yannick Sinner. 2021 was Sinner's year as he won 5 ATP titles. His work ethic just continues to show out. He's the type of player that's constantly making adjustments to improve certain parts of his game. He's a student of tennis, always eager to learn. Not many people know this, but he was actually a professional skier before, and he only started taking tennis seriously when he was 13. Many would say that's far too late to start. But the guy has committed himself to perfecting the art of tennis, and is showing no signs of slowing down. I could come up with a long list of things that he has improved in 2021, but I feel like there's one key thing to highlight, and that would be his footwork and movement on court. It has improved immensely. I feel like this is key for his jump in the 2022 season, because when he hits from a comfortable position, his shots are precise and clean. And with more efficient movement on court, he's going to be able to generate those shots from way tougher positions, easily becoming a counter-attack player like Novak Djokovic. So for the end of 2022, I'll give him number 7. But I will say that he will be a future top 3 player and will gift us with one of the most entertaining rivalries with Carlos Alcaraz. Guarantee that. Alright, so in 6th, I have Dominic Thiem. This one's a tricky one. He announced that he won't play the Australian Open, and really who knows what his injury situation will be like in 2022. He's a player that for so many years worked for a goal, and once he finally achieved it, he experienced one of the most anticlimactic experiences ever. After being so close and denied for so many years, he finally won the US Open in 2020, making it his first Grand Slam. This was at the peak of COVID, with no crowd and none of the big 3 there. Well, Djokovic was there, but he got disqualified. He played Zverev in the final, and they both played a really poor match. I mean, I'm sure he was happy to win it, but I'm also sure that somewhere deep down inside, he must have felt that bitter feeling of, damn, is this what I've been working so hard for? For so long, he had lost to the big 3, and all he wanted was to beat one of them and take the trophy in glorious fashion. But instead, he faced an easy draw, and in the final, he was up against a version of Zverev that even Zverev's older brother could beat. Ever since then, Thiem's mental health has had a dip. He even came out and talked about his struggles. A combination of this, COVID, and some badly timed injuries sent him absent for the entire second half of the season. And just like that, he went from being the heaviest contender of taking the number 1 position at the start of the year, all the way down to being ranked 15th to close the season. Now, the reason I said this one's a tricky one is because he's 28 and it's really hard to tell whether or not he'll bounce back and be as competitive as he was before, or if his lack of self-belief will get in the way and not allow him to fully realize his potential. Personally, I think he has an undeniable level of tennis and he's proven it for years. I think that he'll fight and make his way back into the top 10, but I also think that he will struggle against the top guys who are improving at a pace that's impossible to keep up with. His struggles will come from his own head and not at all from his capabilities as an athlete. And of course, this is given that he won't get injured again. So yeah, world number 6 for Dominic Thiem, still a hell of a ranking spot. Now, this is where things really get interesting. In 5th, and dropping 1 position, I have Stefanos Tsitsipas. I do believe that at some point in his career, he will touch the number 1 position, but for several reasons, I don't think just yet. The second half of 2021 was subpar for Tsitsipas, who saw himself losing a lot of matches that he should have won. The Greek has always faced some hate, but it was really this last year that he became one of the most heavily criticized players on tour for his questionable habits of receiving on-court coaching. To an extent, all this negative press, I'm sure, has had a negative effect on his ability to focus on court. He's a guy that appreciates having fans. He even stopped posting YouTube videos as regularly as he did before, and I think this is because he was getting hate comments. It's also unfortunate that he got injured at the end of the season. All of this has generated negative momentum in his development as a rising player, and I don't see him flipping the direction of his career overnight. Eventually he will though. He just has to work extra hard this coming year. At the pace at which the 4 guys above him are riding their waves of momentum, I just can't put him any higher. Having said that, for Tsitsipas, I predict a slow start in the year and a progressive improvement as the season goes. I think the clay court season will be when he starts to make some statements. By then, he will have had some months to regain his confidence against Zverev and Medvedev, and perhaps make a similar run in the French Open as he did in the previous year when he reached the final. But to contend for the top 2 to 3 positions, you just have to be sharp all year, and I don't see that happening for Tsitsipas this coming year. So, 5th it is for him. Next up, and in 4th, I'm predicting Andrei Rublev. His steady improvement and climb in the rankings in the last few years is heavily due to his ability to remain consistent in long rallies and out-hit his opponents. He has reached a level of confidence in his own game that has been transformational to his success rate against almost anyone he faces. It is true that he's always struggled with the bigger names, but in 2021, he showed that he's not all that far away from them. He had a winning record against Tsitsipas, was neutral with Medvedev, and had a losing record to Zverev. He's right there with them, and I'm giving him the edge against Tsitsipas not only because of their head-to-head, but also because right now he's just hungrier and has a lot more to prove. Rublev has been underlooked these last few years, and I think his game is really maturing and coming together nicely. When he starts ripping those forehands with his signature grunt, there's no stopping him. And personally, I think he's got an underrated brick wall of a backhand. He's really difficult to play against, and not just because of how freaking hard he hits, but he actually just doesn't miss. He's unpredictable. He often produces missile down-the-line backhands out of thin air, breaking his opponent's ankles. He's becoming more and more aware of what he's capable of doing, so it's only upwards for him. So yeah, number 4 is for Rublev. So now it's time for the top 3, and you guys know who they are. Finishing as the world number 3, I have Novak Djokovic. As number 2, Alexander Zverev. And that of course leaves us with Daniil Medvedev, who I have no doubt in my mind will be the number one in the world at the end of this year. Now, I do want to start by saying that I believe Novak will win one more Grand Slam this coming year and have another great season. But Zverev and Medvedev are just gonna be too difficult to stop. Djokovic's pinnacle was 2021, where he won the Australian Open, the French Open, the Wimbledon, and was this close to winning the US Open as well, when Medvedev denied him of the opportunity to get a career Grand Slam. He broke Roger Federer's record of most weeks at number one and held his own against an extremely talented group of young champions. Djokovic had almost the best season of his entire career. Top 3 for sure. And all that being said, Medvedev wasn't even that far away from him. That's how good the Russian has been. The real difference that separated these two in the rankings were the points attained from the Grand Slam titles that Djokovic won. And now that Medvedev has proven that he can win one, trust me, it will be harder and harder for Djokovic to deny him of all the ones to come. All it takes is for Djokovic to drop his level just fractionally for Medvedev to overtake him, an outcome that is almost inevitable. And the same goes for Zverev, who by now is almost a veteran in the top 10. He's been showing real signs of maturity and an ability to fight and bring out his best tennis under pressure. Zverev's skill set has always been there, but recently two things have changed for the better. One, his striking, and especially his forehand. It's just elevated to the next level. And two, he's grown far more confident as a player who knows that he deserves to be where he's at. Both of these things have led to consistent wins and an ability to come back when losing. The only thing I'd say that keeps Zverev behind Medvedev just slightly, because they're two of the most complete players on tour, is that Zverev's second serve still gets in the way of his success. He just chokes sometimes and it takes a toll on the outcome of some of his matches. Medvedev is just slightly more solid up here. But really that's all. They're the future number 1 and number 2 of the ATP. Let's just see what things look like when Alcaraz and Sinner reach their mid-20s. So yeah, here's my top 10 for 2022. Okay guys, if you've made it all the way here, leave a thumbs up. I'm sure a lot of you guys would have put it together differently, so comment what you guys would predict and let's see what you come up with. Also check out my previous video if you haven't, and subscribe for more content like this. Peace!